We
Okay.
have Chantal Matheson, who is also from our area, local here. So she and I have been really spearheading this. So
Nice.
definitely want to connect you guys. And I don't know who Laura is. We've not had the pleasure of connecting yet, but Laura was here last time as well. So
Okay.
um,
How are you?
I am wonderful, thank you. I am interested in today and how it's going to play out, and really wanting this to be an opportunity to better understand where people are at. I want to have some real conversation about um, where we're hung up, about where there are hesitations. I feel like it's really important to have a conversation about the fact that the matrix is real, which sounds crazy to say, but it's like the thought paradigms and the 4D overlaying of ideas and the need to be able to understand self-image, and how we have to adapt that based on the times that we're in order for anyone to be able to move forward. Because if anybody doesn't feel like they have a self-image they can step into, that's really what we have to create as a collective. So that's something that I feel is important to bring forward here. And then part of having the summits and the platform is ultimately to give people an opportunity to ask the questions that they might not be able to find in print from the people that are leading this movement that we had reached out to and who have been helping. So hopefully they show up and are able to continue. There has been some changes within the structure of certain dynamics within the way the redress tour in the UK is being handled, that has created a lot of ripple effects within the community that we want to make sure people don't get lost in as well. Yeah, you're muted. Sorry, Bergie.
I just I need to put in the map and so that I can get home. So I may not participate. Like I'll hear you guys, but I don't want to make a lot of noise. But I'm gonna go. I need to map my way home so that I'm not sitting here in this parking lot.
Yeah, well, honestly, Bergie, thank you for showing up, and do what you need to do. I think the fact that you are emphasizing the need for navigation is very symbolically significant for this meeting, because it is the ninth meeting
Yeah.
and we are 4 minutes past and it's 4:04, and y'all know that I love my numbers repeating. So that's one piece of it, but it is also the fact that there are 5 of us on here right now, and the view is always interesting for what is coming. So there's a lot of transition happening right now, and I don't know who else is going to be able to come. Bergie, look after what you need to do. We're doing, Chantel and I think the best way to start this meeting, given the dynamic of how things are right now, if Chantal is able to come on this camera when you're ready, is to just kind of talk about ourselves and our own journeys to here. And I'm happy to just start. And people have said, like, who is this woman who decided to start hosting these lawfully organized summits? And it's Peaceful Inner Warriors United is a project and movement that I really devoted the last 4 years to, which is all around the transformation of self-image. And it is around the hero's journey and the sacred sojourn of the soul, to really begin to understand who we start out as, who we change into as we go through the transitional phase in between of who we were and who we're becoming. And then we actually get there and then have the wisdom from the journey to share with the others. And so I've devoted the last 4 years of my life to that project, bringing us to this turning point time in humanity's history, when basically all of us are essentially people who would come onto a call like this are warriors that didn't know that we had a war to fight, didn't know we were already in one. And now we're learning that war is often done by pen, and it's a pandemic as much as a plandemic, and whatever you want to say. But basically right now there's a divergence in timelines, and it is about the narratives that are being perpetuated and that we have a chance to really get clear on by understanding our own story. And so for me, my story took me to the highs and the lows in those 4 years. I didn't know I would make it out of it halfway through. And I almost didn't a few times because I didn't want to, because I gave up on myself and I gave up on what I could do, because I didn't have the position and I didn't have the next degree or certificate that would say that I was enough. And I hadn't finished the book that I was working on for so long. And I had so much held against my own self that I couldn't move forward. And essentially, I went through everything that I did, I feel, including not finishing my book until still yet to do the final touches, because I continually restarted it and restarted it and restarted it, which is interesting with the view here. Literally, everyone is not in this screen except for Chantel and I in this moment, simply because everybody is really, we're all needing to focus on our own story. And it's all good, Keegan. It's great to see you there. And Jesse, I can see you're still there, and Bergie. And that's not the point. I love that you're all there, but the point of it is that we are all so focused on our own thing that we don't sometimes have time to step back far enough to be able to see the trees through the forest. And when I was in my story, I couldn't see out of my story. I couldn't see around my story. And that's why my story almost broke me. And what Jackie has said many times in the lead up to this, which is the 9th summit of when peaceful inner warriors unite and gather in the name of talking about solutions. On this night, it is time for us to all understand that the fiction cannot overcome the creator of it unless the creator forgets that they wrote the fiction. And for a while I forgot, and I put my power into the hands of everybody that I thought could wield it more responsibly than I could. And in the end, I found out none of them could. And that I needed to actually put a responsible queen and king on the throne of my own inner self in order to be able to sit before you without needing someone else to complete me, and to be whole and complete in and of myself. And yet, with that being said, able to stand beside others who are also doing their best to do the inner work that helps them show up fully present too, which is why Chantel Matheson and I have been doing this together, because we've both been in our journey. And we both got lost in our story at times. And yet we both stand together and hold space without needing to be better than one another, because both of us understand that we're just ladies, that we're country girls born to farming families, tobacco farmers, and we are proud of our people. And we want these people to be able to continue living and providing for our communities. And so, Chantel, if you want to be able to actually say why you stand here today, because this is, I feel, what it's really about. It's about understanding the people that sit before you, that don't say we're better than you, that don't say that we are the leaders that are doing this because we need to lead. We're doing this because it needs to happen, and somebody's got to do it. And the ones that have the positions are not doing it outside of rooms like Event 201 in October 2019, when they forecast what they would do if they had to handle what they've been handling the way that they planned out. And the dark side is really organized. And we need to become equally organized, and we need to get over ourselves in order to do it. And Chantal, I want to just first off say thank you. I want to thank you for inspiring me and compelling me and holding me accountable to actually do what it takes to be the change that I seek in this world, and to not give up just because a lot of people think I'm crazy, and to not give up when people judge me, and to all of the things that happen behind the scenes. I want you to understand that we all have the person that comes to the summits with us and may not say a tremendous amount, but is there, who is co-hosting, who is leading, who is paying attention, who is plugged in, who is following and riding the waves that we might not have a chance to do. And the thing is Chantal and I have really worked together on this project, even though she may not get as much credit because I talk a lot, which isn't because I want to, but just I follow energy and I have a lot to say. But I want you to know how important you are. And I want you to understand how many Chantals there are in this world that are plugged in and not getting the credit you deserve. So that's the first thing that I wanted to say. And then I wanted to ask if you wanted to contribute anything, having been on this journey with me from start to finish, and your own questions, your own concerns, and then even talking about, you know, the battles that you're personally in right now as you work through all of what it takes to make it so that your children are not masked and growing up with difficulties and health implications because of restrictions that are unreasonable and not lawful, which is something that we're going to get to as well. But I want you to know who's in view and why first.
Well, where do you want me to start?
Wherever feels best, just what feels on your heart to be able to say to people that, you know, don't necessarily want to be at the front and be on camera and be, you know, talking about what they're doing, but that's doing it nonetheless.
Yeah, you don't have to be on camera to be doing it. I honestly, this was hard for me to start being on camera. I don't really care for it. If I can just take myself out like this and then continue to speak, I'd probably be happier, but whatever. But it's definitely been challenging to come out of the dormancy of, you know, just being one of the people who doesn't speak up, you know, just I don't even know where to start. It's been exhausting, the whole thing, trying to learn common law, trying to learn regular law, trying to figure out what to do with children going to school wearing a mask. I tried to keep them home for as long as I could, and they both didn't want to be here because they miss their friends and they want to be with them, even if it is conforming. And as much as that bothers me, I give them the choice of what they want to do. And now I'm just trying to figure out how to get the best of both worlds again. You know, school shouldn't be masked. They shouldn't have to have this piece of fabric over their faces to feel like they're safe. What an illusion that is, to feel safe with fabric over your face that does nothing. It would be nice if people just started to question it and ask, how does that keep a virus out? How does the fabric that has how many holes keep a virus that is the eighth of a size of a piece of hair out? And why are we forcing this on children who have immunity, immune systems that are 10 times stronger than ours, at least? Why are we asking them to do this? Because we're afraid of being sick and dying. We're afraid of death. Death is inevitable. If it's not from this, it's going to be from something else. And so you're just living your life in fear of death, of something that you can't change. And now you're going to die of something completely different.
Well, without having contact with one another, our immune systems can't be challenged along the way in order to keep us strong, because just like all these gyms have been closed, if you don't use it, you lose access to it. And so us not having interaction with others weakens our natural immunity. And then when something else is introduced, then we're all that much more subjective to it, or I want to say subject, but that's not the right word. But the point is we need each other. And this is the point. Chantal is perfect for where we are right now, and the fact that this is lawfully organized. This is the point. We're gathering to say that fear and love cannot coexist in the same space. there is a story about fear walking through the night, and everything's pitch black and dark except for in the distance it sees a house with lights streaming out through the windows. And so it knocks on the door when it gets to the house, and when the door opens, love appears and out streams all of the beauty and the light, and then suddenly no one is there. And it's because love and peace, love and fear cannot coexist at the same space. And so we have to really understand how to actually read what's ours. We have to understand that the feeling of emotion and the emotion of exhaustion that comes from what is taking us out of our comfort zone comes after a workout at the gym as well. If we have worked ourselves and stretched and we've pushed ourselves, then we leave exhausted from that too. But we've achieved something because we've strengthened ourselves. And so these meetings are meant to strengthen us too. These meetings are meant to be talking about solutions. And then what's very interesting is the change that happens when conflict arises and it isn't fully addressed. And then people are left with their heads still on the chopping block because there's a summit and we're going forward with it, whether the key players are there or not. And this is the thing. It's just like we each get an 86,400 second lottery at the beginning of every single day that we then invest however we choose to with our time, energy, effort, attention, and money. And then at the end of that, our lottery is spent and we get another one or we don't. But at the end of our life, we're going to have the legacy and the grand review where our soul gets to sit with whoever it is that you believe you call to. And you're going to have to talk about what you did when our children were masked, which is very symbolically significant for authenticity and the ability to be ourselves fully. Because we've all had the instance of parapet syndrome, I call it, which is basically the high and low points on the edge of a drawbridge castle or kingdom that we hide behind in order to get to our destination and feel safe along the way, because that if there were an archer or a sniper that had us in our lens, we could run to the next one fast enough to get beyond them. Well, they're pretty smart anyway. And the point is that running between these quietly and slower ultimately slows us down. And that then brings me to what I felt like could be a really good piece to this whole experience that I wanted to put forward and offer as well in terms of leadership, and talking about the 21 laws of leadership, the foundation of it. Because the reality here is right now, we're not liking the leadership that we're seeing on the world stage, and we're calling them puppets, which is easy to do when we're in the seats. And it's easier to stay in those seats. It's harder to actually call them out, especially when you're playing on their forums. And then what's harder still is to then actually step onto the stage where the one who's been booed off has just exited, and then to say, okay, we're going to do this, and bring a level of enthusiasm and ignite the kind of trust that's required to actually create movement. And I feel like that's very significant right now to be talking about, because that's essentially what we're all being called to do. Because right now the government aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that's why we're saying, and back in March 23rd, 2001, the Barron's Committee actually called a meeting and made it so that then we essentially, I'm on my rosary. Oh, this thing fell down, which is interesting symbolically as well. But the Barons actually called a meeting in October, or in March 23rd, 2001, and evoked Article 61 of the Magna Carta 1215. And so that was a gift that was given to us, because what it meant is that government was essentially dissolved, is what we've been told, and why we started hosting these meetings to get to the bottom of that. Does anyone else have anything that you would like to see? I got very distracted by the fact that the rosary was what literally was digging into my heel when I have been doing some videos with Michael Seegers, who is the founder of the Shambhala Temple of Light. And essentially, the last two videos that we had done for the Michael and Laura show were actually on Mother Mary and the Rosary. And I am not actually religious. I have come into a different understanding because of what I've exposed myself to, which is what we're doing here. And I would love for someone else to come forward and share an insight, ask a question, share where you're struggling in terms of moving forward in stepping up as the sovereign being. But essentially, there are additional tools, and the rosary was said to be one of them that was gifted to humanity by Mother Mary. So that really distracted me and took me away from trying to say that essentially what's happening right now is that the government are being pulled off the world stage, or need to be, because they're not wielding their power responsibly. And with power comes responsibility and the ability to respond with the power that we've been entrusted, or they've been entrusted with, by the people that elected them. And essentially, they're, if not doing their job, and if not properly responding to what's going on reasonably and saying, okay, you're deceiving people intentionally for a really evil agenda. If they're not willing to do that, then they're personally involved and need to be held accountable and liable for aiding and abetting the treason that's at play. But then what we're asking you to do, and essentially all being called to do, is then step onto that stage and then figure out amongst ourselves how we're going to lead from here, which is a really intimidating proposition that I understand that we need to band together to be able to create a solution for ahead of time. Because if we don't have the solution already ready for people to feel safe enough to move towards, people won't move. And right now, what we can't afford is for people to not move, because the universe doesn't stop moving. There is only moving forward, and then there is moving because you're being pushed. It's like, are you going willfully, or are you moving by force? Those are really the options that we've had. And right now, what we're being called to do is learn what it means to be sovereign. What does it mean to be a natural man or woman? What is the difference between something being lawful and something being legal? These are the questions that I believe we need to start asking. And then also, how can we all use the tools that we've been given without saying that my box is better than your box? And because these meetings were supposed to be Article 61, 1215 Magna Carta meetings, and then none of the leaders of that movement show up to be able to help, I don't know what to say other than we need to find solutions. And so that's why we call these meetings in the first place, to offer an opportunity to people who see the need to be sovereign, that see the need to be the leader of your own life, and then also understand that you don't necessarily know what that means. Maybe you haven't had the opportunity to be exposed to as much leadership training as what others have. For somebody that's been a certified coach, teacher, speaker with the John Maxwell team for 10 years and got to be at really high level meetings that exposed me to leadership, to understand how it's done, and then how it sometimes happens behind the scenes too. And then to understand that the back behind the scenes stuff can't be on display outside, and also it can't be the focus, because if it becomes about people rather than a movement of which we need to all become moving members of, we don't move forward.
Laura,
Chantal?
did you tell them the link today? Is there any, did you post it to Facebook? Are we live on Facebook? Do they know how to join?
I didn't post it live to Facebook because I wasn't quite sure how it was going to go.
Okay.
I didn't know whether people would necessarily feel safe with that so much. There's a lot of negative energy coming towards all of what's going on right now, and so I just I didn't know whether it would be helpful to be broadcasting it live when people are not necessarily wanting their faces seen on the screen, or if I don't know. I don't do drama. I don't do drama very well, and I don't know how to talk around it without telling secrets. And then it just becomes the life story of why it took 4 years for me to write a book, that in order for me to tell my story, I would need to tell other people's stories, of which I didn't have the authority to do, not because I couldn't, but because out of respect, I wouldn't. And so with that being said, what we're really being called to do right now, as much as this is a movement for moving forward with pressing our authorities to do something different and to not participate in the insanity of doing the same things over again, expecting different results, is instead to be able to say that if I'd have broadcast this meeting, that would have actually made a lot more sense, because then people would have known there was no threat. But then there's also the external judgments that come in from people that observe silently and then come in and then offer their feedback. Catherine, it's great to have you on. Welcome. Thank you.
I also did invite Stephen. I sent him the link.
You did.
So I don't know who's going to jump on.
I did post the link. So I don't know that it's because the link isn't available. Catherine, you got the link, no problem?
I did today, not last week though.
Yeah, last week was an oops.
Yeah, last week I evidently had thought that I had created the meetup group, and then I had evidently not. So I did better this week, but definitely not perfect. But it's great to see you on. Thank you for coming on. It's a bit of an interesting time with everything going on, and wanting to really make sure that the people behind what is happening are the focus, rather than any kind of drama or stuff that's happening behind the scenes that's ultimately dissuading people from doing what's required. And so we were actually going to have we were going to have on somebody that had reached out to me about what we're doing with these, and just wanting to be able to just connect and clear the air and understand. And then because Chantel and I were willing to have that meeting, we then lost alliances or something. It just, everything gets complicated when drama gets involved, and it's not necessary. So the point is it's like we host these meetings because we want to understand how to move forward. Stephen was actually going to also share something that he was going to share last week but didn't have an opportunity to do, around birth certificates. And what he's proposed is that they actually predate the 1215 Magna Carta and go back all the way to the early thousands, and that it's in the Lincoln Cathedral Church in the UK. So he says that there's actually a certificate on the wall that says that it goes back all the way to 1000 and something, that would then predate the 1215 Magna Carta, which then means that the birth certificates could actually be something that we could use as another tool as well. And it's like I was saying to someone earlier, is it possible that the 1215 Magna Carta Article 61 was a tool our ancestors gave us to be able to use now? I fully believe in my heart of hearts, yes. Now, the rosary that was poking me from Mother Mary, could that be, whether you're religious or not, another tool? Yes. And then the birth certificates, another tool? Yes. And other tools? Yes. And like, what would happen if we actually had so many tools available to us, but we were so concerned with our particular box being the box that everyone else agreed with, that then we just dropped the walls and then saw what was available and kept our foundation in what we actually knew, and then also understood what else was available too, without it needing to be that our walls collapsed and killed or crushed one another, but instead that they overlapped and became like bridges. And I understand that that seems really idealistic, but what if that was possible? Catherine, would you like to share about your journey, where you are right now with all of this, how you got involved?
How did I get involved? I've totally lost track of how I got involved. Just so much information about so many different things has come to my attention since last March. Yeah, I really don't even know where I first started. I guess probably in some of the groups that I started, people talking about it. I don't know what it was that made it click though, because I remember back in the during Occupy, there was an Occupy settlement in Bristol, and during that time, hearing about a lot of talk about the free man movement, and I just totally ignored it. It didn't click, it didn't resonate. I didn't take any interest in it at all. I've got no idea why, and I don't really know why it has just sort of clicked this time, but it really has, and just yeah, I'm just really starting to see the importance of learning about how, in as much as I can, how the systems are working at the moment that are, well, just all of them really, the ones that are controlling us, the ones that aren't, the ones that are beneficial, just learning how things work, how they're working, how I would like them to work, processes to get to how I would like them to work. And I think the thing that is really standing out for me, it comes down to one word, and that's democracy. And I wish that would be even in all of the common law groups. I wish that would be talked about more, because I think more people could relate to what we're doing if we actually talk about, because they think that we're living in a democracy and we're not. And if we could sort of talk to people on that level, I really think that more people would engage with it, and then sort of feed in all the stuff that we are talking about. But I just feel like that would be a way in for so many more people. But for me anyway, that is the thing, that is really what this is. It feels like what, yeah, the whole thing down into a nutshell is that we have to get back, reclaim, because it has been so before, some kind of a proper democracy, proper systems where people are self-governing, and yeah, just have the power over their own lives. And what I like about lawful dissent is, of all the things, all the avenues that I've done a bit of research in, I really am at the very beginning stages, but the lawful dissent process was the only process that talked about actually proactively making that happen, and not trying to sort of stumble our way through the courts and other systems that are just, to my mind, going to take absolutely years and years and years, if ever, to change anything. And I don't feel like we have those years and years, and I don't want to wait, even if we do.
No, people are being altered as we speak.
Yeah, it feels like it's a point of no return. So
Well,
now we either do it, or I don't know what.
well, we either do it or we become truly enslaved. Like either we do it, or we just read Agenda 2030 and then
Yeah,
see what they would have in store for us if we don't do something different.
yeah, we don't even have to read it. They'll do it.
Well, this is the point. It's just like, if you just want to know what they have planned, just read
Yeah.
Agenda 2030 or Agenda
Yeah.
21, which is the Sustainability Act,
Mm.
which is completely treasonous from the perspective that is it treasonous to want to conserve the resources for the few at the expense of the many? Like, I don't know. Like, would it be treasonous for like a small party of leaders to want to just like kill everybody else so that their resources were conserved for themselves? I don't know. Like, it's pretty obvious what's going on right now. And it's just like the ones that are on the world stage that are making calls that are at the expense and cost of people's health and livelihoods. Essentially, they're not really fully understanding the fact that they're going to have to call for their actions at the end of it. And if they're not willing to be responsible for the fact that if they're on a spiritual level, our recommendations, so like part of these summits, it's incredibly important for Chantel and I to figure this out in terms of, I can send Stephen an invite. I thought that I had, but with the, I'm just going to send it to you and you can send it to anybody, sorry. But with there's a level of spiritual responsibility that comes because as a leader, if we don't actually, oh, I can just send it to him direct, perfect. If we don't actually know what we're recommending, then, oh, darn it. Oh, I just sent the wrong Stephen.
No.
Oh. Sorry. Okay. This one. Okay, perfect. They got a few of them. Okay, so if we don't know what we're advocating for and we lead others down a path that looks like the path and the way, which oftentimes I've previously always said, generally speaking, if there's only one path, it's a trap. Like if there's only one way and one way out, it's a trap. So it's just like understanding that. I try not to go after the ones that say, this is the only way, because then I say, okay, well, then there's just a way they don't want us to be aware of. So it's like, this is the piece, and it's two parts. Then when I say, it's just like, we have to understand that if I'm focused on fixing this part of the car and you're focused on fixing that part of the car, and everybody knows what part of the car to fix, we don't actually know how to fix the whole car, because we're just so box mealed and piecemealed in with each other as to what our specific role is before we hand it off to the next person to do their role, that we don't know how to actually work together more cohesively because we don't know what everyone else is doing. So that's really what these meetings are about. And then the fact that Chantel and I have kind of stepped up and said, okay, like we need to get answers. And we understand that if we're just two women in Norfolk County trying to figure out how to best advocate for ourselves, our loved ones, and people that don't even know that they need to be advocated for, that are allowing somebody that they think has their best interest at heart but don't, then it's just like we have a personal karmic responsibility to lead you guys well, as does everyone, because leaders are held responsible for where we lead this flock. So it's just like, Chantel?
I think that the video that you sent me yesterday, was it you that sent it to me? Or did I send it to you? About common law, that guy that was speaking about common law.
Oh yeah.
That would be a beneficial series of videos for people to watch.
I think that is just the best place to start. William Key. He's just.
No, not William Key.
Oh, is it not? Oh,
but he is very beneficial as well. Yes. No, this is another. What is his name?
This was a politician that was basically saying that common law is, so he was saying that they've just voted, or I can't speak into it from memory well enough, because there's the part of us that's been skeptical, and it's just like, well, what's paid opposition, what's opposition, what's alignment, like how does it all fit together? Because there's so much misinformation and disinformation out there right now that it's so difficult to actually know what to believe, because there have literally been false reports and articles that have been made to make it so that we get thrown off the trail of the truth. Because then if they know that the truth is out there, then if they can paint a mistruth that counteracts that and says that's fact, then which fact do you believe if the fact checkers are already being sponsored by the ones that have a vested interest in the storyline being a certain way? Which people that are so indoctrinated the way that our education system trains us to be, to not question authority, and the medical industry have been given that title. You were going to say?
His name is Mark Christopher.
Mark Christopher.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that
Yeah.
video, when I watched that, I wasn't quite sure where he fit into it, or whether, because what was his message? It was about common law is.
Well, he's just trying to explain, like, well, there's multiple videos that I watched yesterday, so I'm not really sure which one to go off of, but he was explaining words, how they use the Black Law dictionary to, get around things. And he was just trying to explain common law more in depth, and what is entailed in common law, like slavery, for instance.
I thought that the first video that I had watched, or I'd only just got started onto it, but it was basically saying that common law was, they were making it illegal or something, and I thought that was the message, and then I was really skeptical because evidently I misunderstood the beginning message. So
yeah, I know, I don't know why it's labeled that, but that's not what it's about.
Okay. Well, what Chantal and I were thinking about doing as well is to even just create opportunities where we can do some screenings of some information that would be useful for people to be aware of. And we will actually get Stephen on at some point, whether I sent it to I sent it to two, Stephen, so I don't know whether the right one got it or not. I thought I'd sent it out to people beforehand. Pardon?
He's Stephen Martin.
Yeah, I did get it over to him, but where it goes, I did my best. But today was an interesting day, and I feel like it's a reset day. And so I appreciate everyone who has come today, and would really love to know what would be most useful on these summits. We are still doing them on a weekly basis, but certainly need to have conversation as to the support that can be offered, because we're just looking for clues. We're looking for the truth, and we're just looking for alignment with warriors who are willing to take a stand and be able to know what we need to know, because if we don't know our rights, we don't have any. So Friday mornings, we were thinking about doing the showing, or we could do it at a different time. So whether that was something that other people wanted to be part of, would love to make it so that we could have a watch party of some of the documents that people need to be aware of. And then we have to be aware of how to be critical and think critically when we're observing all of this, to really understand and tune back into our intuition, which is not part of the movement for A61 per se, but from my perspective, this very much is about so much more than one tool. It's about the whole picture, and it's like you're in the picture. Literally, you who are here, even if you're not on the screen right now, like you're part of the picture in this whole mosaic of beautiful lives that is humanity, that are being called to step up and to make sure that our children don't grow up thinking it's normal to have to wear masks to run in phys ed class, or to go into a store when previously we would have thought that that was a criminal, and we just laugh about the difference, and the difference that a year makes. Well, it's just like, I would be fearful of what it would look like in a year from now if we don't step up. And it's like my ring hits the bell by accident, or my little my little drum. It's just like it literally hit it of its own accord, and it's like, here. Like we're gathering now because it's required. So thank you for doing that. And so in terms of becoming lawfully organized, I would love to really know what that would be for you. I would love to know where you would be willing to, like, these are hard questions to ask. Like, where would you be willing to go with this? And what would you be willing to do for your freedom? And it's just like, these questions sound like ridiculous questions, because it's like, how could you possibly ask me that? Like, that puts me on the spot. And it's like, well, where else does life happen? Like, life happens right here, right underneath the sun, right where we are. And it's just like, we got to be ready. So it's like, we need to practice, we need to know what we can do. And it's like, with the practical lawful dissent, which is now called International Practical Lawful Assent Group, or Dissent Group, that group it's got all the forms that David Robinson had created before he departed from this world. And essentially what it does is it lays out steps for us to be able to serve the COPS courts and councils, and be able to let them know that we know what game they're playing, and we don't play dice in their domain. And so we are sovereign men and women that understand our sovereign rights and understand we're more powerful as common law beings. And so we're going to exercise our rights by learning about them, which can be what Chantal and I kind of lead on Fridays. And these meetings, these are an opportunity to bring forward questions. So it doesn't mean we have to be here for the whole hour and a half. But certainly any questions or stories or feedback or concerns, those things need to be addressed. Because the thing is if you're willing to get yourself onto these meetings and then you have concerns and you hold them back, imagine the number of people that have those concerns before they even get on a meeting, and then don't get on the meeting and don't get that concern addressed, and then don't do anything. And then when they're standing at the gates of judgment, so to speak, at the end of their journey here as them, as us, it's essentially like, I didn't take the next step. I just stopped. And then I got put onto a train and taken to the concentration camps, which sounds really gruesome. And I don't mean to make light of it, but it's just like the ridiculousness of thinking that it's going to get better is just mind-blowing, when we actually look at the fact there's agendas that are laid out as to what the plan is. So it's just like, we need to be lawfully organized. We need to understand that we can't play in the legal domain, because that is already set out for the corruption to continue, and for us to then just get put away, because the Mental Health Act, from my perspective, is the modern day witch hunt. So it's a great place to be able to lock up really clever people that are individualistic, that say, just because it's always been done this way doesn't mean I'm going to minimize or reduce or harm myself for the sake of herd immunity, which they changed the definition for in October 2022. Did you know that? They actually made it so like all of it's about vaccination, whereas before it at least was somewhat about health, and now it's just completely sterile. And that's the point. If we allow the drama and the conflict and the pain and the fear that has always been around to come with us where we're going, we bring that into the creative energies that we are choosing to create with. And so what is happening right now, I believe, from a symbolic perspective, is old patterns and paradigms are being cleared. And that's why I wanted to talk today about the matrix. And it may sound strange, but we're already red pillars, which means that we kind of woke up to the fact that not everything is as it seems. And the blue pillars, who still believe that the government is their hero, ultimately are making choices irresponsibly that are ultimately potentially damaging themselves, because their parent told them that it was a good thing, and the parent has Munchausen syndrome, which means the parent is benefiting from the child's illness. And we know that the parent likes the producers and suppliers of said same injury inflicting objects or mechanisms, because ultimately there's an indemnity clause that holds the corporation not liable, and the individual then just has to pay for the price of their choice as to who to trust. And so in this world, learning who to trust is part of being able to step onto that stage and trust ourselves. Because if we don't trust ourselves, how can we possibly move forward with a movement? How can we possibly move forward if we can't trust the leaders specifically? You don't necessarily know me or Chantel or Jesse or Catherine or Mario or Tariq or Bergie. You don't necessarily know any of us who are watching the replay of this later. So how do you know you can trust me? Especially if somebody then goes out and says, paid opposition, and it's like, if that story is used, that is not in any way true. I'm just trying to find the truth. And so it's just like, before I say something, was somebody else going to say something, Catherine?
No, sorry.
No. The wind is interfering.
I hide the computer this way. Is that better?
Yeah, much.
Yeah, I think that maybe since our peoples didn't show up that would be able to answer questions, maybe we should just move it for another day.
Yeah. Sounds good.
I don't know why all three of them didn't come, but is what it is.
So
it's been a funny time like that, I've found. I think there's something happening. I don't know what it is, energetically, planetary, something. There's been some kind of shift over the last month, I would say.
There is definitely.
It's yeah, it feels like it's been a bit of a clearing, but it has been kind of weird.
Well, and with every clearing, you've got all the driftwood that got brought up, right? And then also there's the toxic barrels too, which are like energetically. It's like emotionally, if we're in a situation we don't want to deal with, it's like, I'm just going to shove that into that toxic barrel and throw that over the ocean. And then it can get buried, and then it sinks down to the bottom. And over time, it might get hit and dung and, start leaking and a little stream here and there. But it's called the toxic barrel effect, or no, the toxic barrel effect, but toxic load. From a pollution perspective, it's the toxic load of the environment that we have to be mindful of. And these toxic barrels, the effect of it is essentially like, we can put as much toxic buried emotion into this ocean as we possibly want, but sooner or later there's going to be a cataclysmic event. They call it a significant emotional event, what you can see. And this sea comes in and suddenly stirs that pot to the point where all of those buried emotions start hitting up and exploding onto the surface and erupting and leaking. And all of a sudden you've got a giant mess. And it looks really tragic, but it was always there. It was just under the surface. So it was there in the shadow side. And now the shadow is being cleared, which is what fear is. Because fear is not just the false evidence appearing real that Wayne Dyer said it was. Fear is also false emotion appearing real, which means that in the moment we get triggered, we think that it's about whatever just happened. But the reality is we were only triggered because the false emotion from the past appeared real in that moment, because it reminded us of the reflection of that bad memory. And suddenly we're on it like a dirty shirt, and we're wearing it because it was dirt the whole time.
I overcame some fear today. I called the police today to ask them a question that Stephen prompted me to ask.
What was that?
He told me to call and ask if everybody in Ontario has to follow legislation. And the police answered yes. Everybody, police, government, schools, citizens, everybody, they all have to follow legislation, and legislation creates laws.
Yeah, that's what they think.
Where does the legislation come from?
We are the legislation. We are legislation.
What does that mean?
It means we create the laws.
Well, we are the law, but how would we be legislation? That would be like saying that we're the narrative, not just the creators of the narrative.
I wish that he could get on here, because he'll explain it all. I was on the phone with him for like an hour today. It was really good. And anyway, the police, he admitted it. Everybody has to follow it.
So does that help our cause in terms of kind of taking power back and shifting things, or?
I don't know what it has to do with, like maybe helping in common law, but it helps our power as the people to take back our country for sure.
Because the legislation is in place, which means the people are in place.
The legislation's in place, so people have to follow it, whether they think they're above the law or not.
But if we are the legislation, then we are in place, and we can't follow ourselves if we're in place. So
you send him another invite so he can jump on here and explain it.
Well,
he says he didn't get it.
Oh, okay. Well, the thing about all of this though is that there have always been loopholes added into all legislation because the elite needed to make sure that they could use everything that benefited them and then get out of the parts they didn't like. So there's always been loopholes built into this. And that's why the elite and the secret societies kept this information hidden. Because if we understood that we are the law, then we would actually understand that we have equal right and authority as what any lord does. And what is a lord but one who actually spells it LAW''D, for one who has come to understand the universal laws and then is able to wield the sword of the sacred word wisely in order to create the truth. And what Stephen had said in a previous summit too is the fact that we have to have everything written down because everything just spoken is hearsay. So it has to be written down. And if we can actually come together and keep working towards that, like we're doing great. And you're absolutely right, patterns are being cleared right now, and there's still great stuff and great value that's being achieved from simply gathering and expressing the fact that we don't necessarily have all the answers. But the beauty of the fact that what we're calling is for everyone to step up as sovereign men and women, as sovereign beings, as natural beings, by the fact we're calling, which none of us are actually natural anymore. Like all of us have been eating GMO products for how long? So we all have some level of GMO within us, but at what point do then we become more GMO than natural? But that's a whole nother point. But the thing about being sovereign is it's not just about one leader. Like there will be natural leaders that put their hand up and say, hey, I think I'm best in this seat in the bus. And then it's like, okay, go and check out that seat on the bus and see how you fit there and see how you like your neighbors and how you get along and what you can do. And then it's like, if we need to move you, then fine. But it's just like, we need to just collect the people to get people onto the bus. And we need to be able to say that if you've got question or you've got concern, or if you're going to get turned off by drama between individuals, I understand. But at the same time, don't be dissuaded or determined or turned off because it's not happening fast enough. Like this is here for us, but we need to be willing to work through our own doubt. We need to be willing to work through the discomfort that comes when change happens, when the pot gets stirred and shit rises to the surface, and then we have to skim it off in order to figure out what's good and healthy underneath of that. So there is going to be this process where that happens. And the reality is that it seems that there might just be parties going in different directions with the same cause. And what's wrong with that? It just means we cover more space. So long as when those parties split, there's not slander on either party towards the other in any way, and ultimately it just stays about the movement, we can move forward, I would say. So you're not the only one, Tariq, but thank you for showing up today. Unless anyone else has something that you wanted to say today, I would be glad to say it. If you've got questions, I'd love to hear them or comments.
I was interested, what was it Stephen saying about, what was he saying about what had to be written down?
Anything that you want to, anything that is true, it needs to be written, is what he said, because anything else is hearsay.
I disagree with that. I don't see how inalienable rights need to be written down. Why would they need to be written down? They're inalienable rights. They're divine rights. They are just because they are. So
I think he mean he'll have to clarify, and he would be able to do that a lot better. I think it's more like it was the response to, it wasn't so much about the unalienable rights. It's about anything that we're saying in terms of defending ourselves or stand up for our rights, the unalienable rights that you mentioned. That's when then, as the natural men and women, that I've lost.
Is he talking about evidence, do you think?
Evidence, fully evidence. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I know that I'm speaking out of turn in terms of saying that, which makes me then go into the space of not feeling fully confident to answer the question. Because that's the thing, like with all of this too, it's like no one is an expert in everything. Like no one is the person to take advice to about everything. Like you wouldn't go to your pastor to learn about sex, or you wouldn't go to a child to learn about sex either. You know what I mean? Like you just, the universe does have unwritten laws, but if we can actually understand what those are in the Hermetic principles, and then we can actually start using those for our own creative process, which is essentially what we're doing when we come together here. Like, yes, it is about Article 61 with the 1215 Magna Carta, but it's just like, if we can't get the answers that we need, then like what do we go for then, right? Because people will always go for the path of least resistance, and it's just like we have to be offering like the most appealing thing, or the thing that meets the needs of the people the most, in order to help them see themselves in it. So that's what these meetings are, and it's just like, it's sometimes, you know, you feel the pressure when you're not quite sure how things are going to go, and you're not quite sure, and it's just like, we're neutral parties, but at the same time, like the dark side have more to lose by the light winning than what the light do, because everything is light already. It's like, if from my perspective, it's like the grand overall designer is experiencing itself through all of it, from the bad to the good and all of it. So no problem, Chantal. But if that is the case, it's just like, there's just so much chaos right now that I think it's probably best to just kind of end it for today, but simply say we can come back together and be stronger again next week, but we don't have to have the answers. We don't have to show up and, you know, be ready to, like, it's not about defending people specifically, and it's certainly not about creating a space where it becomes the adult playground. Like we are children in different forms of development, and yet we're all just trying to create a better world for the kids that could come through us, or that already have, or that might. And so it's just like, that's who we're really working for here. And it's just like, if we don't get the questions answered that we need to be able to move forward, we won't, which is what I say every week. So I hope that for anybody that chooses to come back next week, that you'll bring your questions, you'll bring your experiences. Awakened Travel would love to know what you mean by that, Bergie. If you wanted to expand on that, would absolutely love it.
My friend just sent me this. It's, oh my God, I look like I have a nest. You
look fabulous.
Then this is tamed. It's like normally like out to here, all over, but anyway, the wind. My friend just sent me this, and we're both travel lovers, and normally I'm in Mexico this time of year. So
lovely.
It's a group based in the UK, over 28,000 members, and it's for free thinkers, and they also mention sovereignty, and for free choice, free thinking, free travel. Not free, like not costing anything, but for free thinkers.
Oh, cool. Thank you. I just saw that pop up. And then I also saw that Mario had said, yes, the fact is common law is cause no harm. Jesus gave one law, the golden rule. That's the common law. Yeah, like we are travelers in this life. we only get driver's licenses because we think that we have to. And now that's when we put ourselves into that corporate domain that somebody doing business as a driver would need to put themselves into the arena of. But because we don't know that, we rush out when we're 16 and go get our license thinking we need to in order to drive. And so it's just like, I love that you shared that, Mario. I absolutely love that you had shared about the golden rule and the common law. And we are being called to get back to what it means to be a natural man and woman. And so with that being said, I'm going to be doing, I'm going to put together a PowerPoint for next week with some of the definitions that I feel are really important. And I would love to know if anybody has any definitions or things that you're looking to clarify, because I feel like if we can get clear on what it means to be sovereign, if we can get clear and understand what it means to be a natural man and woman, if we can understand what lawful means instead of legal, if we can understand what common law is compared to civil, if we understand what commonwealth means, for instance, it will help us all be able to move forward. And Mario, that's absolutely no problem. I appreciate you for showing up anyway. And so I will use that as the opportunity to say any final words for today's meeting, other than thank you to everyone for showing up.
I'm sending a text. Our law system, far as I understand, is based on Roman law. And the law is so like legalese, like it's so, it's very rare for a law to get thrown out. And so that's why there are a lot of amendments. And what makes it so complicated.
Yeah, well, and even I was speaking with Stephen earlier, who was pointing out a document that he's going to send me that I'll be able to share for next time as well. But basically in that, which he talks a lot about the e-laws, and what he was saying is that there is actually one that is, it's an addendum. I think it's kind of along the lines of what it essentially was, but it's like, it's written so that it essentially gets added to whatever comes after it. Mm-hmm. And so it's just like, if you don't know that when you bought the package that you got the bonus, then you don't know to go and retrieve your bonus. And so that's essentially what's going on right now. It's like, if we don't understand that legalese is a way that they can literally, and I was just told this I was speaking with somebody else on the phone earlier, and they literally said that in the court, when the judge says, I can't hear you, that's because they literally cannot hear the language that you're speaking because it's above them. So you have to drop it down, dumb it down to their level to be able to use it on the crown floor. So when we understand, when they say, I can't hear you, it's not because they don't understand you. It's because understanding you would potentially jeopardize the fact that it is easy to just get around the fact of how powerful we are and forget that we actually are dealing with the fact we are the law. And if we are the law, then that means when we go into a courtroom, which is their jurisdiction, but when we're in their courtroom, we can actually know how to, if we actually know how to advocate for ourselves, then we can stand up for ourselves, and then it can get thrown out. And ultimately that I was talking with Michael Seegers earlier, who had a friend that actually figured out the law well enough to be able to go in and advocate for himself in a trial. And when he did so, and he served evidence in a common law trial, that he served evidence, and then it ended up that it was immediately thrown into a different courtroom, which was an international immigration courtroom where no one spoke English. And when the judge got to the courtroom and then figured out why he had been moved there, and then he was still able to speak for himself and advocate, the judge literally said, there's the door. Because the judge wasn't going to be able to do anything. But then my friend said that his friend who had the experience of it had then got sent the fine in the mail because they said one thing, but then they did another, which is why we need to have it recorded. And everything, you need to have it videoed, you need to have it written down, but written's going to be best, because there's the part of me that still thinks about the fact that, like, if they attack the power outage, like the power systems, and then knock out our ability to actually have communication. Because I watched that show that Jackie had mentioned, which is on YouTube, which is A World Without Canada. And the very first episode is about knocking out communication, because they talk about Alexander Graham Bell, that was born in Brantford, which is half an hour from where myself and Bergie and Chantal and Jesse lives, in Brantford, actually. So literally, like, they were talking about Alexander Graham Bell's invention of the telephone, and then talking about a world, like what would happen if the telephone hadn't been invented and you weren't able to connect with one another. And it's just like, if we don't have something in place before something bigger happens, then we really are isolated. Right now we've got Zoom, and now they're training everybody to be good with Zoom, so that then we're all good with being in our own little isolated areas. But then what happens if something happens to our social credit, for instance, and we're not allowed to use those platforms, where then we've created our whole identity online? Like, and what if the power outages go and then we aren't able to communicate with one another because we can't charge our phone, and we can't use our cell phone to record things or go live on Facebook? It's just like, what if they've been giving us all of the things that we think give us a false sense of security, and then suddenly when we actually need them, it's like you go through that like 10-day blackout, and then suddenly, like, you wake up and like people are not in the same place where they used to be, and nobody had the ability to let anybody else know about it. That
is happening. That is happening, and I think that is the importance of looking at the bigger picture. And this is bigger than just common law. Obviously, that is a big part of it, but the whole thing about decentralized systems, peer-to-peer systems, communication systems, currency systems, all that sort of thing, it's happening. It is starting to happen. And I think get in there and find the projects that are doing it and doing it authentically. And, you know, there is talk already about communication systems and putting up our own satellites and having them solar powered. And yeah, so it is being talked about.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, we've got to do more than talk too, right? It's just like, that's why we're doing this. It's just like, we can only talk to a point, and then it's like, we need to
it's being done. It is being done. If you're interested, look up Qortal, Qortal, a project that are like proper anarchists for the people, peer-to-peer, no hierarchy, no money. I mean, there's money involved, but there's money doesn't get you power. And yeah, they're the people talking about putting up our own satellites, you know, running things off Raspberry Pis, powered by solar power. It's happening.
Awesome. I love it. Good. Okay. And Mario said as well, yes, we are under the Roman law or civil law. Everything is a corporation, so we interact under the contract law or admiralty law. In the end, the trust created with the birth certificate states that we belong to the Vatican. That's why it's important to know the history, since the Pope Bonifacio, oh, what is that number? Is that 13? 8, 10, 13. 8? It is the 8th. Thank you, Mario. 8th.
Oh, what? 8, yeah.
Oh, because it's a 10 minus 3. I forget how the, okay, we don't need to go into, sorry, thank you. So Pope Bonifacio VIII wrote the first document that binds the humanity to them.
Where do we find out about all this stuff, like the trust and that kind of thing?
Well, this is what we need to get figured out. Like, we need, so like, it's like last week or last time you had given a great reference, and so the next day Chantal and I actually showed that. And so we recorded the whole William Keats episode that you had shown, and then I chopped it down a little bit so it saves a bit of time in rewatching it. So
Yeah.
rewatching something like that could be very beneficial for sure. 5. Oh, 5. Yes, that's right. Okay, of course. My mind is just a little bit scattered sometimes. Jesse, you're funny. He's just like, oh, Laura. Or was he just watching his hockey? I don't know. No problem. Oh, that's perfect. I appreciate your showing up anyway. And so basically, with all of this, if we can just find a place to be able to share the resources that are really valuable, then we can create some watch parties, we can get the information, and we can actually start doing more of it, which is what the purpose of these are, really, to gather and just, have a place to share information, to share success stories, to share challenges. But also, I just really want warriors to be able to recognize each other, because I think that it matters. I think we need to be able to recognize each other, because individually in our own lives, generally speaking, I would suspect that we're the ones that other people kind of look to as the black sheep that's doing things a bit different, that's speaking out. Like, our social credit system, if it goes to that, is already going to be low, because in our own lives, we make waves, because that's just what warriors do. It's like, we don't try to go into the china shop and break everything. It's just sometimes we kick. And it's just like, it's because something was broken and or something needed to be hit. Like, generally speaking, warriors are precise when wielding their sword responsibly. So we really need to just continually work on ourselves to become the people that can actually do what's required in order for redress to take place, in order for us to band together. We can't lose the movement in the madness of what is being cleared. So, we can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. We have to make sure that we don't lose one another and throw one another out just because drama has arose. And that is to also say that drama doesn't, it just needs to go away either, because it needs to get dealt with. And I don't speak specifically in relation to this movement. I speak generally speaking. We can't throw out people, but we also have to start really just understanding how we're showing up in every moment. We have to understand how we're leading ourselves. We have to understand what we're not sure of, or what we're uncomfortable with. And then if we can really just check ourselves before we wreck ourselves, then we have less likelihood of guiding others down a bad path that's going to ultimately get us all hurt. I just saw 2 masked girls hug each other in a store, and I cheered them. It's wonderful. Yeah, that's what it's about. There's a great guy talking about this. He's Australian. His name is Santos Bonacci. Explains everything about the history, birth certificates, courts, and Vatican that had started all this. Yeah, we need to get Santos on. We need to get people that are doing this. It's just one person doesn't have all the answers. We need to just reach out and realize that in this movement, we're all being called to be sovereign, which means we might, a couple people might step up to be leaders in circumstances, but situationally, generally speaking, we all have to be leaders of ourselves first. And that means, we might not be the ones that want to advocate for ourselves or stand up for our rights or somebody else's, but we do it because we know that it needs to happen. So thank you for doing what it takes to get to this meeting today again, and building that community, for cheering those girls off or cheering them on. And it's just keep up the spirits, guys. We're the lighthouses. We matter so much. It's just other people look to us because they see that we're different, and while it might frighten them and they might not like it, it's just generally speaking, it's the people that dislike us most that pay attention the hardest, because they know that you can do something and they're scared of that. It's just you're a threat to somebody that wants mediocrity and a life of average. You're a threat to somebody that doesn't want to change. There's a poem that I love that's "Don't Date a Mystic Woman," of which we're all mystic people. And it's basically to say, like, don't date a mystic woman if you want your life to stay the same, because it won't. Don't date a mystic woman if I can't. It's absolutely brilliant. I highly recommend it. But like, we're mystic people, and the world knows it, even though they don't know it because we haven't been given the language in recent years, because there's been a lot of education that's not been in our natural nature or in our best interest necessarily. And it's like, we're the players on the field here to change that. And it's just like, we can only whinge to the point we then say, okay, so that's the bound I don't like. And now we're going to step over and we're going to create something new. And so that's what we're doing here. And so we're going to wrap it up and say thank you and have a phenomenal evening, guys. And thank you very much for showing up again.
Cheers. See you next week.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.